Hey everyone, if this is your first talk with us, welcome to PMM Fest. And for those of you that have already been tuning in, welcome back. We hope you have been or will be enjoying what's going on here. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to all our sponsors, partners, festival attendees and speakers. Without all of you lot, none of this could have gone ahead. If you're not already a member of our Slack community, do head over there and sign up. There's going to be lots of product marketing conversations, resources and chit chat going on in there, both during the festival and long after. So that's all from me. Enjoy the talk.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today. My name is Danielle Latham and I'm going to be talking about the importance of being nimble and how you can adapt your product marketing strategy in times of upheaval. So welcome everyone who's joining. I'll give everyone a minute or two just to introduce themselves and then we'll get started. And just so you all know, throughout the presentation, I won't be looking at the chat too much. We can do a Q&A at the end. So if you've got any thoughts, anything you want to share, just pop it in the chat throughout the presentation and I can get to it after that. And welcome everyone. And I can see there's quite a broad group of people already, which is fantastic. So feel free to introduce yourselves and I'll just wait a little bit longer before I kick off so some more people can get in. Hey. So I hope you're all having a great Friday so far and that you've been able to catch some of the other excellent sessions that have been happening all week. There's 2 more days left of the festival, I believe. So there's still lots of great sessions you can make. And obviously this one will be shared after as well if people aren't able to make it. But I'm going to get started. So welcome everyone. So the importance of being nimble. So first of all, just a bit of introduction for me. My name is Daniela and I work for a game-based learning company called Kahoot. I'm in product marketing. I've been in marketing for several years. My background's actually originally in fundraising, but I've been in marketing and I made the transition to product marketing last year. And honestly, I've never looked back. I feel like product marketing is just a great discipline. It's a great fit for what I'm passionate about and what I believe in. And I'm based in Austin, Texas, but I'm originally from the UK, which you can probably tell from my accent. So I used to live in London, but now I'm in Austin. I've been here for 5 years. Not sure if that qualifies me as an Austinite yet, but who knows? Hopefully I am. And I'm also a Product Marketing Alliance ambassador. And here are just some of the ways you can connect with me. Love building my network. I love meeting new product marketers. So connect with me on LinkedIn. So I just used this slide to kick off really. Obviously, there's been so much going on this year, and a lot of what I'll talk about is the upheaval due to the COVID outbreak. So earlier on in the year, there was this website I was looking at called Is It Cancelled Yet? As marketers, we were starting to track the cancellation of big trade shows from Mobile World Congress to South by Southwest. And obviously, it was clear that so much was happening, that big events was getting cancelled, that there was this transition from going live, doing things in person to suddenly going remote. So there was a huge shift, as we all know. So a bit more on what I define being nimble as, and here are my definitions. Now, when I say data informed, it's a bit different from being driven by data, because data is never really going to tell you the full story. It's a guide. That's how I see it. So rather than just being driven by everything the data tells you, it's more about using your intuition with the data. It's also about moving fast, being prepared to roll with the punches, and always having visibility to your key stakeholders. Now, you might ask, why not be nimble all the time? Why am I focusing on being nimble right now? Well, of course, the market was in upheaval due to the COVID-19 outbreak. And companies' budgets were significantly reduced, lots of people going through layoffs, and really efficiency was key. So inefficiency had to go operationally. So this was why I define it as being nimble in this time period specifically. And just a bit more context on my situation with Kahoot around the time of all this upheaval. So we're a learning platform software, and most of our use comes from in-person learning experiences. So classrooms, events, in-person trainings, and meetings. So we had to make that transition from an in-person situation to going fully online. Alongside that, we also needed to support the needs of our users and manage a broad user base. So that's a bit more context on where I was coming from with Kahoot and revamping the product marketing strategy there. And in this presentation, I'm going to focus on B2B. So here are the three key pillars really of how you can go about adapting your strategy when there is upheaval. So the first thing I'll talk about is more around pivoting your positioning. So obviously your buyer needs are completely changing, their behavior's changing. How can you understand that? Next, I'll move on to go-to-market strategies. So how can you adapt your go-to-market plans? What are the key tactics for distribution? And then finally, I'll talk a bit about managing capacity. So how do you leverage expertise across your networks to be able to fully adapt your strategy? So the first step is talking about pivoting your positioning. And there's some key areas in this. So I'll look at keyword research, doing a website audit, looking at your competitors, and then updating your positioning documents. So starting with keyword research. And of course, if anyone's got any ideas they'd like to share throughout as I'm going through these steps, please feel free to add this to the chat. I'd love to hear if you've taken on certain things as well and have certain advice, that would be fantastic. But kicking off with keyword research. So really, as product marketers, it's a good idea to do keyword research in general once every 6 months in a normal situation. But obviously the COVID-19 outbreak meant we had to update as soon as possible. So what were the users looking for now things had changed? Was it online learning? Was it virtual learning as opposed to classroom learning? And so I moved fast and had to figure out how keywords had changed. And this was a good place to start to understand the data behind the feeling and understand how to pivot our product. So what did the buyers actually need? So this screenshot is from a tool called keywordtool.io, which I like to use for long tail research. And it's also good to cross compare it with a tool like Google Trends. But don't be driven just by the trends themselves. You don't want to be reliant on buzzwords. So you want to look at the data overall to get a clear picture to drive your messaging. So make the balance between looking at trends happening right now versus the keywords over time. So this is just a snapshot of the sort of research I was doing. And then there's a tool I just like to recommend as well. It's called Exploding Topics. You might have heard of it already. It's a weekly newsletter on searches that are increasing exponentially. And you can segment it by all sorts of categories, whether that be product, business, design, technology, all sorts. But I really enjoy just getting that every week and seeing what's really taking off. What can I look at? Is there something interesting to dig into here? So I recommend signing up for their newsletter. It's Exploding Topics. Now I've looked at the keyword research. The next step will be to audit your web pages. So what are your most vital pages? Which pages are getting the most hits? Which pages are completely crucial to your buyer journey? Are there any drop-off points? So you want to pinpoint where exactly you'll need to update your key messaging. So I recommend using a tool such as Lucidchart, which is where this screenshot is from, to visually build out your website hierarchy. Or you can use another tool. And again, if anyone's got any good recommendations, please share. You can visually recognize with a tool like this, the pages that you need to prioritize. So in Kahoot's case, we prioritize our pages based on use case. So for the business segment, that's training, presentations, events, and so on. But you might have a different structure and strategy. So once you start to map out all your key web pages and you have everything crystal clear, you can start to make the updates you need to your messaging. The next step is looking at your competitors. So obviously any product marketer worth their salt will always have their fingers on the pulse when it comes to their competitors. But obviously in times of rapid change, of upheaval, you want to watch them more closely than ever. Now, we all have limited resources, so I recommend focusing on the 4 to 5 must-track competitors. Obviously, it's good to keep track of new ones coming in that you hear about, but don't spend too much time on all of them. Just look at the maximum 5 top competitors you can focus on. So focus on how their messaging's changed in the times of upheaval. And I strongly recommend doing this very early on and keeping the research updated as the situation unfolds. So when you're looking at your competitors, this is just pulled from a template I use for tracking my competitors. I like to look at the company as a whole, the highlights, then look a bit more at the market information, a bit more around their messaging, and then obviously the products and services that they offer, dig in a bit more on that. So this is something you want to keep track of all the time. You want to keep it updated. This is a very dynamic document that will be an asset to you. Once you've made it through those stages, you should now be ready to update your positioning documents. So your positioning documents are obviously your bread and butter as a product marketer. So I strongly recommend, if you haven't already, get a really good template and stick to it. So now you have some data, now you're aware of the situation unfolding, you can update your positioning documents with all your findings so you can track what has changed. And I recommend keeping track of the changes so you know what your former messaging was, your former positioning was, what your current positioning is, and if you anticipate any more changes in the near future, so just make a copy of your template as you go along. And here are just some of the key areas you want to have in your positioning documents that I like to keep track of. So obviously, what is the product? What's the positioning statement? So how do you talk about it both internally and externally? Who will use it? Who's your target audience? What are the key benefits and what problems are you solving with this product? What sets you apart? What's your differentiator? Which actual words do you use to describe your product on your website, in your platform? And what do your competitors do? So these are fundamental documents you will need to update. So next, we've gone through pivoting your positioning. Now it's time to move on to go-to-market strategies. So in this section, I'll talk through a bit more about how you can look at your roadmap and manage your go-to-market plans. How can you get the right content in front of the right people with content distribution? And also getting your customer feedback to be sure that you've made the right changes. So first of all, how well do you know your product roadmap? Now, as product marketers, we should be syncing tightly with our PMs, with our product leads, obviously. But of course, you might have varied levels of access and impact when it comes to your product roadmap. I recommend syncing with your PMs bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, if you can. And that will be dependent on the ratio of you to your product managers. So you might have a lot of product managers to manage. You might be working with 1 or 2, but try and keep synced with them. And when it comes to the roadmap, like I said, you might not have access to make a big impact on it, but you can certainly make recommendations because you are the one that knows the market, knows how it's changing, and can make these clear recommendations to your PMs. So which features should be prioritized, which features should be postponed based on the changing buyer needs. You can make that recommendation. And how should you package the product and the features, depending on your research, depending on what you've seen competitors do, other research. So an example of Kahoot was that we had a specific feature that we had planned further along in the roadmap as part of another sort of product package, but we brought it forward. And that was the ability to import slides into your Kahoots, because we knew that would be of great value to our users in the current times of upheaval. And why was that? Because during this time, people were transitioning from presenting in person to presenting online. So as we know, I'm doing it right now, I'm presenting to you remotely. It's a real challenge to present remotely to people because you can't judge the room necessarily. Even if you're on like a Zoom call where you can see faces, it's really hard to judge engagement. So For us to be able to give this offering where people could import slides and mix them up with audience participation features in Kahoot, that was great value to them because they had the opportunity to engage their audience remotely. This was something we looked at. And I also recommend considering creating a standalone go-to-market plan for any larger feature changes. So you might not be launching a whole new product as a result of this, but you might be repackaging your features. So it's good to keep track of all the moving parts. So I recommend creating a standalone plan. So next up, content. So at Kahoot, we used our keyword research to help pinpoint key content areas that we could capitalize on as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. And we looked at key video conference tools. Obviously, people were using these more and more as they were transitioning to remote work and presenting using online tools. So we looked at the key video conference tools that people would use to help present Kahoot online. So that was Skype, Slack, Zoom, and Microsoft Teams. So we distributed a series of blog post guides for each of these top tools. And as a result of doing that, our content had a real positive impact because we also moved fast. So we found that our blog post about using the product remotely, is top performing. So this had a big impact. And the pivot to online learning also turned out to be an ideal opportunity to develop and pilot a webinar program. And this was a chance for us to try out new things. So this was both as a product demo, but also as a way to introduce the new use cases for the product. So using the product via video conferencing, which some people might not know about. So we wanted to get the message out that you could use the product remotely, and it wasn't just an in-person experience. And what was great about webinars was there was more opportunity to manage this with people being online, working remotely, seeking new resources, seeking new opportunities. So that's why it worked well. So even if you've got different ideas, it's worth getting creative and thinking about new ideas, maybe a program you thought of piloting for a while but aren't quite sure. This could be a good time to try it out. And as always, just track what you learn from it. Not everything is going to work perfectly, but it's good to try things out and learn from it. Now moving on to customer feedback. So of course, you should never stop tracking feedback from your customers. So I'm not sure about other product marketers, but I like to speak to a customer at least once every week. So have an interview with them, see how they're getting on, understand their pain points, understand what they like about the product and so on. It really depends on your resources, of course. We're a small team, but some of you might have a lot more opportunity to do more research. But regardless, we should always be talking to our customers. So make sure that you update your interview questions to gain more context from your users. So like I said earlier on, understand how their behavior is changing, understand how their challenges have changed. So you want to get more context from them. And also find out how they're responding to certain features that you might have rolled out recently. So the screenshot here is from a tool that I use called otter.ai. I actually found out about it at the PMA event that happened a few months ago in Austin, and it's a great tool, honestly. It's a way to record transcripts of interviews, and this way you can write them up really quickly. So not only does it record the interview, it transcribes it as you go. So that way, you're not forgetting anything, and you can also focus on asking the questions during your interviews rather than being distracted trying to take notes and trying to keep up. So strongly recommend you check that out. And if anyone else has got any good tools they use for their customer interviews, please share. I'd love to hear more about that. So moving on to the final stage of adapting your product marketing strategy. And this is all about managing capacity. So managing it both internally and externally. Now, the point of this graph is to show you the other key stakeholders who need to be kept in the loop on changes, and the key stakeholders and teams you need to be tightly aligned with. So they will be your allies in supporting you. So just going through the teams, by marketing and comms, I mean the other specialists who will help you execute all aspects of your go-to-market. So that might be your content team, lifecycle, email, PR, all your other marketers. There's obviously sales team, which is very straightforward, and also product team, who you'll be working with very closely, especially on roadmap and go-to-market. I've also added executives here, because obviously any upheaval will affect business strategy at the top level. So even if you don't have access to senior executives, you should facilitate a line of communication to them. So that could be through your line manager or another key stakeholder who you have a good relationship with. And that way, the executives will be aware of your plans and will help you have visibility. Because we know as product marketers, one of the biggest challenges we face is visibility, and others in the organization knowing what we're working on, knowing what we're bringing to the company, knowing what we're doing, because we're managing so many stakeholders and we're working with so many different teams. So that's why it's good to get a clear line of communication. And of course, don't just ask questions and get advice within your teams internally. Look outside your company. So obviously, Product Marketing Alliance has been such a fantastic resource. It's got an amazing network, and I really recommend checking out their Slack. There's so many great channels in there, not just for networking, but also for resources, for content, for templates. And it's just a really great group. There's so many intelligent and talented people, and everyone's very supportive. There's lots of questions asked, there's lots of help provided. So I really recommend making the most of these resources if you're stuck, if you need help. And I've also added HubSpot here, because I also really like using HubSpot's resources. They have a great blog, more about marketing and sales in general, but there's some fantastic articles that you can dig into to get more research, understand more. So what did all of this hard work lead to? So just some feedback on the impact of the work. We had a 40% increase in page traffic month on month as a result of all this work after upheaval, 44% increase in new subscriptions, and 28% increase in monthly active users. So just to recap everything, first step, momentum. You want to move fast when there's upheaval. You want to have your finger on the pulse and look at what other people are doing and see what's happening, what's changing. The next step is, of course, cohesion. So being strongly aligned with your teams, understanding the roadmap, how you can help recommend and influence the roadmap, and managing go-to-market, any changes that you have for distribution. And then just recapping what I said about data. So be data informed, access your data, be informed by it, and then react, then make the decision. So thank you. That's actually the end of my presentation. And here are my details again. And I think Rich has posted my LinkedIn. So please connect with me. And you can also find me on my website as well. So if anyone's got any questions, please let me know in the chat. Can't see any in there just now, but I'll give you just a couple of minutes if there's anything you want to ask. And if you don't have anything to ask right now, obviously reach out to me afterwards or connect with me through the PMA. I'm happy to talk.
So obviously working from home is new for a lot of people, and a theme we've seen throughout the festival is people maintaining the lines of communication as best they can, but obviously there's difficulties that arise from that. What would be your top tip to sort of keep motivation high when there's so much going on in the world that can be quite difficult?
Absolutely. I think empathy is obviously the big one. We need to be kind to each other and be aware of the things that are happening, and that not everyone will be able to react right away. They're going through their own situations. They're going through their personal struggles. So I think being aware of that. I would also say, honestly, over communicating. So not just going to your colleagues and asking them to help you with your work, but also just checking in on them, being there to over communicate. And that the fact that you don't have the direct line to them in person, use the online tools, make the most of those to check in. I think there was some feedback around maybe doing a lot of Zoom coffee chats or virtual hangouts can be quite overwhelming. So I recommend just using a messaging tool like Slack or similar to just check in and use that as a way to over communicate and check how your colleagues are. And I've got a question from Christia. What other roles in your organization did you work with to put together this pivot plan during the pandemic? So really, those were the key teams that I work with. So if I go back to that slide, I work really closely with the rest of marketers in my team and our sales team, our product team, and then of course, executives, it's really hard to get aligned to, but we do the best we can to have visibility there. So, and then I'd also say support team as well, because obviously the demands on the support team just shot up during that time. So those were the key areas in the organization that I was working with to manage this plan. I don't know if there's any other questions. Thank you. But yeah, if you've got anything else you want to share or want to ask me, please let me know afterwards, and please connect with me, and I'd be really happy to keep the conversation going.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah,
sure.
Your LinkedIn is on the chat, so everyone, thank you very much for hosting today, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in. And if you do have more questions, please hit up the LinkedIn. Great.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Speak soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.